All right, we're on the bus with John from BlackStoneCherry. How are you today?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Welcome back to the Sunset Strip. A lot of rock and roll history around here.
Yeah, man.
Everybody and you're probably your dad and uncle probably played up here.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But you know, I know that you've got now your roots are in Florida, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're from Florida. How the hell did you get mixed up with these Kentucky boys?
Well, let's see. I moved to Kentucky when I was 15.
Okay.
I moved up with my grandparents, and I was just supposed to come up for a little while. I was going to help them remodel a farmhouse that they bought. They got a farmhouse and 40 acres for $41,000.
Wow.
So it doesn't get much cheaper than that.
No, man. That's
So I
the
came up to do
American
that,
dream.
and I wasn't quite done with it whenever school started up, so I just stayed and started school. And I met John, Fred, and Chris, and at first we weren't big fans of each other. I was a little bit older than they were, and the band director asked me if I would join the drum line because he found out about my history with the drum line at my previous school.
Okay.
So I was like, yeah, cool. I went and joined and everything, and I was a little bit more serious about it than the other two were.
All right.
And they didn't like me for it. So, but at any rate, a little time went on, and music brought us together, and we started playing music together. And the house got finished, and my mom was ready for me to come back, and I was like, I ain't come back. I'm playing music in a band. I love it. Kentucky's great. I don't want to come back. So my parents ended up moving up to Kentucky. My sister and her family moved up as well.
Sure.
So long story short, it just kind of happened.
What was kind of the common thread? What kind of, melted the ice between you guys as far as, the common ground?
Man, honestly, I think it was how serious we all were about playing music for a long-term career. Because with John Fred, his family, the association with the Headhunters, and then Chris's whole family is all very musical. His dad plays guitar. His grandpa built acoustic guitars and mandolins and all that.
Wow.
So when the three of us started, we were all just very like-minded and very serious about trying to do something with it, And then fast forward a couple years later, we met Ben, and he was extremely serious about wanting to do something with the music business.
Yeah.
And it's been the four of us ever since. That was June of 2001.
Now, did it help a little that John's family was already in the business to kind of give you a, well, if they did it, it's possible kind of link?
With John Fred's dad, more than anybody, Richard of the Headhunters is kind of like the business guy that's in the band.
Okay.
He handles 90% of all their bookings and their contracts and all that stuff. So having him involved was very beneficial for us because he kind of showed us where the pitfalls were and helped us avoid those.
Kind of a blueprint.
Yeah. I think a lot of people back home are like, well, John Fred's daddy handed you a record deal. And it doesn't quite work like that. But no, we had to prove our own worth. Ultimately.
Yeah, of course.
But once we did
it's
that,
nice to have a mentor.
Yeah, exactly.
That's been there, done
once
that, not read about it, but actually did it.
We had him there kind of over our shoulders going, I wouldn't do that, boys. This is kind of where I would go if I were you. Even still today, I call Richard every couple of weeks and like, hey man, this is what's going on, what do you think? And kind of bounce ideas and stuff off of him just to get his take on it because he's brilliant. I mean, he's been in this business for years and years and years. He's 60 years old now.
Okay.
The Headhunters won a Grammy in I think 90 or 91.
Okay.
So they've been around for quite a while.
Yeah, yeah. Been there, done that. So now I understand the new album kind of takes you guys back because that's kind of where you did the initial recording, the first record.
Yep.
So talk about your first recording there and your desire to kind of bring it all back to the roots.
Well, we were, let's see here, about January of last year, we were kind of sitting on our thumbs, so to speak. We had just finished a very successful headlining tour through Europe and the UK. We finished up headlining arenas in England. Yeah. And, it was incredibly successful. I think the whole tour was like 98% sold out. Wow. Our first time ever headlining arenas and all that. We headlined Wembley, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Packed houses every night. It was fantastic. We come home from that, and the record label at the time, Roadrunner, who was bought out, basically sold their soul to Atlantic.
Yeah.
They were wanting to try this country market thing because we had recently had success with one of our songs called Stay that Florida Georgia Line covered, and they had a #1 hit with it. So Nashville was and is kind of hot on us, you know. So they were wanting us to do this country EP thing, and we're like, okay, cool, we're down with that, because we're a southern rock, country rock kind of band. Anyways, we're a lot heavier than that, but that root is there.
Right.
So we were like, cool, but we have to do it on our own terms. You know, if we're going to do this, we're not going to sell our soul to the devil in doing it.
Yeah.
So we were sitting around kind of waiting on them to get their ducks in a row, and they were just dragging their feet. And finally, Chris, our singer, I'm telling the true story right now. Not many people do that. Finally, Chris, our singer, sent them a message that was basically like, so what is it you do here? And they didn't take too kindly to that. So they were like, all right, we're done. And we're like, cool. We have better things in our future. So we ended up working out a deal with Mascot.
Yeah.
And they're fantastic. They got Joe Bonamassa, Government Mule.
Sure. Monster Truck.
Yeah, exactly. They don't sign fluff acts.
Yeah.
Which was the main reason why we wanted to work with them, because
more boutique, more hands-on, more personalized.
Our thing has never been, oh, we fit the radio market. Our thing has always been, we set the mold.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the kind of acts Mascot goes for. So it made perfect sense for us to be with them. And whenever we were working the contract out, we had already decided, you know, this is a new day for us. So we've turned the page. We're in a whole other chapter now. So we need to kind of go back and revisit where we came from. So we went back to the same engineer we worked with on the first record. The first record, though, the difference is between it and this one is the first record, you know, we were green, big time.
Yeah.
So we had Richard, John Fritz's dad, and David produce the record together with us on the first one. This time, you know, we worked with Richard and David then. We worked with Bob Marlette on our second record. Howard Benson on our third. Joe Barisi on our fourth. We were like, man, we work with some of the best minds in the business, and we have taken the good and left the bad. It's time for us to produce our own record. And we had already made up our minds.
You guys were diligent in each of these processes, that you were kind of a student, you know, protege.
Right. So whenever we were thinking about doing the record, we were like, we're going to go back to David and get that same kind of organic, raw sound that he's good at achieving, and we're going to produce it ourselves. We're going to remove everything else from it, and we're just going to do it on our own. And we did, and so far so good. We've had some of the highest sales and highest chart positions. We charted in, I want to say it's 30-some countries. Okay. Number one on the rock chart here and in the UK. Yeah. Top 15 here overall, and top 5 in the UK. So can't complain. Yeah. Can't complain at all. So it apparently worked. But revisiting like that is exactly what we needed to do, because we needed that rejuvenation. You know, after everything we had gone through. Hence the name Kentucky,
just bring it all the way back to the
every musician that's on the record, aside from us, everybody we brought in to play like organ parts or do like Soul Machine has horns and background singers on it, chick singers, you know. Everybody's from Kentucky. Okay. Even the strings that are on the Rambler, a dude named Chris Carmichael in Bowling Green, who's won Grammys for his arrangements. He's in Bowling Green, Kentucky. It's 30, 45 minutes maybe away. It's where the majority of our crew guys live. Okay. You know, so I mean, everything is Kentucky made.
That's beautiful. Now I know you got an amazing cover of Edwin Starr's War.
Yes, sir.
And besides loving that song since it came out, I saw Bruce Springsteen do that, the LA Coliseum, and see that stadium just erupt with War. So, not an easy one to cover, you know. I mean, anybody can play it, but you guys really nailed it.
Thank you.
You know, talk about the idea of, you know, making that song and the process of doing it right.
We were originally looking for just an array of cover songs to do for like B-sides, because every record label wants you to have B-sides, and you know, it's wise to have them, because then you can do special editions and special releases with certain companies like iTunes and Best Buy and FYE and all that. Sure. So it was originally just meant to be a B-side for one of those special cuts, and we started working on it, and it seemed so natural, and it felt like a song that we would have written. Yeah. You know, we were just like, man, this has to be on the record. We have to put it on there. That's why it's there. And I mean, it just makes perfect sense with the times that we're in right now, and it being a Motown, you know, era track. Yeah. And everybody looks at us like we're like this second coming of Southern rock, but a lot of times they kind of miss the bill on the fact that we're heavily influenced by Motown and blues and jazz and funk. Yeah. And all that stuff too. So we, you know, it being our first record that we produced, that we're doing pretty much solely on our own, we wanted to make sure that all of our influences were covered on the record. You know, and whenever that song got finished, we were like, this has to be on the record. We have no choice.
Yeah. Well, again, an amazing collection of songs. You didn't miss a beat by producing it yourself, because, like I say, as long as you got good engineers and the songs are good, you know, you more than anyone know what you want to sound like, as opposed to have some producer's fingerprint all over it.
That was kind of our thought process in it too. We were like, dudes, this is our 5th record. If we haven't figured out what we sound like by now, we need to just go to the house.
Right,
just hang it out.
Now, I love all the records, but no question about it, you know, Magic Mountain just blew me away when it came out. And
awesome.
I don't know if you guys know, we got an amusement park up here called Magic Mountain, but
a
lot of special reasons, But also, the Me and Mary Jane song, I mean, you could take it on so many levels, but seeing the legalization and the positivity that has come about through this medicinal marijuana movement, legal in Colorado, legal in Washington, legal in Oregon, and I guess it's about another 30 states. Pennsylvania, I guess it's going now. Whether you support that or not, obviously that song is quite a theme song for you know, that movement. What's been some of the positive feedback you've gotten from the Mary Jane song?
Man, a lot of times bands these days can be taken too seriously, you know? And whenever we did our 3rd record, that was the first time we ever did anything that was somewhat tongue-in-cheek to a degree, with like White Trash Millionaire. We always try to make sure that even though we might go tongue-in-cheek like White Trash Millionaire, there's still a purpose behind it. You know, like with White Trash, the whole point of that song is saying you don't have to be rich to have everything in the world. You know, just because I don't have a 401k and, you know, $40,000 sitting in the bank for mad money doesn't mean I don't have happiness. You know, because that's the ticket to life, is just be happy regardless of what you have. So that song takes it in a very tongue-in-cheek manner, White Trash Millionaire. I mean, it's about as country podunk as it gets, but it's tuned down to B and just guttural heavy. You know, but it's catchy at the same time. Kind of the same thing with Me and Mary Jane. Man, honestly, it makes perfect sense for marijuana to be legalized everywhere because, first of all, I've never heard of anybody being high from smoking weed and killing a family of 4 from a car accident. Because usually you're driving 20, 30 miles an hour under the speed limit, and you're so far between the lines that you can measure both sides of the vehicle, and you're dead in the center because you're so paranoid to mess up. You know, where with alcohol, you're doing 195 mile an hour, and you think you're doing 35.
Can't see straight.
Right, exactly. God made weed, man made beer. Who do you trust? Ultimately.
No
Not
question.
to mention the fact that our government can tax the ever-loving crap out of it and dig ourselves out of the hole that we put ourselves in over the last 100 years.
A bankrupt state like California could be, you know, in the black in the first year.
Well, the most profitable city in our country is Denver. Why? Because they were the first ones to go. They made somewhere like $40 billion in the first year. Just off of marijuana.
Too many people that don't know about it think it's the gateway to heroin and cocaine.
No.
It's got nothing to do with that.
It is quite the opposite of all that.
I always say in the inner cities with all the tension, a lot of people be killing each other if they weren't a little high.
That was
it mellows them out.
I was reading statistics about it, like about a year or two after Denver went, you know, legal for medicinal. I was reading statistics, and their crime rate decreased by like 70-some%.
It's like Amsterdam. That was a perfect example.
I mean, come on. The math doesn't lie.
Maybe we need to do what Amsterdam did and legalize prostitution so we control it, so we don't have these streetwalkers with diseases, and it can be maintained like up here in Nevada at the Bunny Ranch.
Exactly.
You know?
People are going to do it regardless.
Exactly.
They really are.
Might as well control it and tax it.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it, but if they're going to do it, at least put it in a situation to where it's controlled somewhat so you can protect the population.
Right. Now, on this new record, what songs are you most proud of? What do you feel really hit the mark?
Well, let's see. Rescue Me. I really love that track because it was never intended to be really what it is. It kind of became this like Kansas Queen-esque tune, but just super heavy because with all the harmony stuff that's on there, and that just kind of happened. I guess that's what happens when you leave me, Ben, and David the engineer alone in the studio for 30 minutes. So I went up to sing the harmony on the chorus, and whenever we came to that one particular line towards the end of the chorus, right before the title of the song, I sang the harmony, and I was like, man, I have like 3 or 4 different harmony ideas for this part, but I don't know which one it needs to be necessarily. And Dave was like, well, let's just try one, and we'll track all of them and listen to at different times and see what works. It ended up that all of them worked. And then at that point, Ben was like, hey man, why don't you try this one too? So I tried another one, and then David had another idea, and I tried that one. It ended up being like 8 or 9 harmonies that I did, and then each of the other dudes went in and did one a piece as well, and it ended up just being this wall of harmony. So that Kansas Queen thing, it's the reason why we ended up starting the song off with, because it just made perfect sense when it was all done. It just kind of happened in the studio.
Sure.
So that one's really great. It comes across really great live as well.
Yeah.
And the end of that song is one of my favorite musical pieces we've ever done, because it goes so left field. It's got this like Black Sabbath-esque. It's got that old Black Sabbath hammer-on pull-off thing, and then it just goes like Pantera metal at the end of it. I love it. But then you got Soul Machine, which is probably the funkiest, coolest, most fun song to play live ever that we've ever done.
Wow.
I love that track. In Our Dreams is one that, we wrote that song with Bob Marlette.
Okay.
Let's see here. That was for the 3rd record, but Roadrunner thought the track was too heavy for us. So whenever we split with Roadrunner, we gave them a list of songs we wanted to get back that were never used, and they agreed to let us have them. And that was one of them. And it's just funny because that's the song that everybody at Mascot or management and everybody's like, first single. Like, okay, Roadrunner didn't think we should even cut it. That's funny. But yeah, that's one of my favorite songs we've ever done as well, because that, of all the songs we'd ever turned in that never got cut on a record, that was by far my favorite, and everybody else's in the bands.
Sure.
That's why it was the very first one we tracked.
So obviously you had the relationship with Bob, but it's easy to kind of have a co-write, because I know you guys are so self-contained on this, but it's just another.
Bob produced the second record, but we came back and we wrote In Our Dreams, and we also wrote a song called Killing Floor that was on our 3rd record. We wrote that with Bob and John Five.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was killer. That experience was amazing. And Bob, we still call him, Uncle Bob, Uncle Badger Bob. He's a brilliant man. He taught us so much. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Since we tracked with him, that opened my eyes as a bass player immensely.
Yes.
Because before that, I was a guitar player that played bass, because I played guitar from the time I was 13 or 14 years old up until we started this band.
Sure.
We started the band, I was like, all right, I'll play bass, cool, whatever. I just like playing music, I don't care.
Yeah.
And then I started falling in love with it, and then when we did that record with Bob, I was just like, man, there's just so much I can do here that I never realized I could. He really taught me a lot about that. He taught us all a lot about vocals and the way vocals should be on a record. Same thing with Howard Benson, though, because they have 2 different techniques. Bob's thing is the lead singer always has to be on top. Okay?
Everything's built around them?
Well, no, not necessarily, just in pitch level.
Okay.
So the harmonies would be under, and the lead singer has to sing the highest part at the chorus. Howard Benson is the opposite idea. His thing is, wherever the lead singer is, the main harmony has to be a 3rd above that. So since then, working with both those guys, we've sat back and we've paid attention to what Chris's range naturally works the best for, and what key the song sounds the best in, tempo and all that, and that will help us decide where the harmonies need to be, whether it needs to be the 3rd under the 3rd above. Howard Benson's the reason why I sing as high as I do on so much of our stuff now, because I was the only dude in the band that could sing in that range. It kills me, but that's my job.
Adds another level.
And we do that pretty often. It all just depends on if the song calls for it or not. But it's that amount of, just being pushed.
Yeah.
You discover new things about yourself, and that was the great thing about working with the different producers we have. It's like Parisi taught us, you don't always have to conform to that 3.5 minute radio format. It was like, just jam the song. If it feels right, play it like that. And that's when, if you listen to Magic Mountain, every song on there is like 4.5, 5 minutes. They're all just really long songs, and the solo sections are double what they had been for us traditionally before that. And that's when we started, really paying attention to the fact that sometimes a song isn't going to breathe the way that it's supposed to unless you just let it be what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because on this record, we have those shorter songs that would fit, I guess, radio. But that's because the song lent itself that way.
Sure.
And then you have other songs like The Rambler's like 5 minutes long, and it sounds like it's more of a radio-esque song, but the story wasn't finished. So it had to be what it was.
It's got to organically take its tail. Now, you say you collaborated with John 5, which some people would think, wow, here's this Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie guy, but he's written with Skinner, and he grew up watching Hee Haw. That was his favorite TV show. He's from Indiana. Talk about how that came about.
John 5, that dude, he is an epic guitar player. He came in, and he actually lives like where Bob's house is. If you go on up to the end of the street, turn right, and then turn right again, his house is right there, so directly behind Bob.
Oh.
And they're good buddies, and Bob was like, let's see if John 5's home, because it'd be cool to have him come jam with you guys. I think it would be a good fit. We're like, awesome, because we love John 5.
Yeah.
He came over, and it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He comes over, makeup, the whole deal. I mean, he lives
Shades, the whole thing.
Yeah, he lives it. It's awesome. And what a lot of people don't realize is that dude is one of the best country guitar players in history. Chicken picking like none other.
Oh yeah.
But
his solo albums are all over the map.
Yeah, and he taught us. Well, mainly the other two dudes, the guitar players. He taught them some tricks that we've kind of hinted at here and there, and applied to different songs here and there ever since then.
Yeah.
But writing with him, he told us whenever he first sat down, he was like, guys, he said, I'm not a lyrical dude. He said, I'm a riff guy. And we were like, fair enough. You're John 5. You can be that. So he came up with that Killing Floor riff that is da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's just super musical. But at the same time, it seems dumb when you look at it the way that it's played, and you're, brought up a certain way musically, and you watch the riff be played, you're like, how does that make sense? And you sit back and listen to it, and like, wow, it actually is almost classical. If it was played clean and maybe on a flat top or something like that, it would sound almost like a classical guitar part. But when it's played dirty and tuned down to B, all of a sudden it's like this heavy metal, sludge rock kind of thing. He came up with the main riff of the song, and he came up with the title of the song.
Wow.
After that, the rest of us just started slinging lyrics together and the rest of the riffs and all that, and the song was born pretty quickly.
That's amazing. Now, speaking of guitars, you got a wild man, Ben, that you're on stage with every night, and he brings it.
He does.
And what's that like to see that energy? Is it inspiring to see how much he gets into the song?
That's how all of us work, man. If I feel like I'm starting to like peter off, I'll turn around and I'll look at Ben or John Fred, and I'm like, it just amps me right back up again, and then I start jumping off of whatever I can get my feet on or whatever, and that's just how all of us work. If one of us looks over and sees somebody else starting to slack off, we will literally run up to him and say, come on! We will kick each other's asses constantly on stage to make sure that the show is always on 11. Yeah. That's like the most important thing, because these days, dude, you can steal music so easy, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The one thing they can't take from us is their live show.
That's it. At Aftershock, there was like 60 bands on the bill, but you guys and your performance was definitely one of the standouts, and it's because of that. It's great songs and great performances.
Right.
You can be running around all you want, but if you don't remember the songs, you're not going to remember as much.
You'll just remember that one band. They were good live. I can't remember what they were called.
Yeah, I can't tell you a song.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's that combination. You guys are definitely on a roll. And obviously it's really taken off for you in the UK and in Europe and everything. Obviously, being from America, did that kind of take you back, or did you hear about the history of so many of the great American artists that Europe or England has embraced?
Man, we knew the trick, I guess you could say, because we had we knew the history on it and the way it had worked for so many others before. Like Hendrix, for example, that dude played the Chitlin circuit for years and was nothing.
Yeah.
And then he goes to England for a little while, comes back, and he's the biggest thing.
It's that British press,
ever.
Man. They're everywhere.
Absolutely. And dude, it's been irreplaceable for us. Absolutely. Because classic rock did everywhere in the world other than America, we were the cover story.
Yeah.
We were still, it was like a 12-page spread. We were still the center section of the magazine,
Absolutely.
but they went with a different cover for America because they have to go with what sells.
Yeah.
In America, we weren't selling as good at the time. But even then, you know, people still bought the magazine. You know, they still saw a 12-page spread on us, and it still brought a lot of attention to us, you know?
Yeah.
That press, you're right, that press over there makes a big difference.
And that media over there is so much greater than here. You know, Rolling Stone, I don't even see any music in there anymore, and Revolver, you know, we have very little media over here, but in England, you know, classic rock and Mojo and all the Q and all these great magazines.
Right.
You know, it's pretty amazing that, you know, the fans support that.
Yeah, you know, it's weird because magazines have definitely petered off a lot with the birth of the internet. You know, just like album sales have, because now you can go on Google and find out anything you want to find out, usually.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe they can find out anything they want to from Wikipedia, which is a terrible idea because that's open source. It can be manipulated by anybody.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ever saw the BlackStoneCherry Wikipedia page. It said we were from Birmingham, England.
Oh.
And I laughed. I was like, yeah, because I totally sound like I'm from Birmingham. I don't think so, but okay.
Right.
But no, it's difficult these days for magazines. I mean, there are so many great magazines that aren't even around anymore.
Yeah.
Or they, like Rolling Stone magazine. It's still called Rolling Stone. It still looks like Rolling Stone, but if you actually look at Rolling Stone, it is not a rock and roll magazine.
Right. You're lucky to find 2 pages in there.
It's tons of pop and tons of politics and
ads
tons of
and
just what's going
fashion.
on today and you know, our world instead of what's going on in the rock world. You know, because that's the thing. Rock and roll has always been its own universe.
Yeah.
It's the only genre of music that has been, always will be, regardless of its size and its stature in different countries. But, you know, particular magazines here in the States just don't keep up with that. They have to veer off and do their own thing, which is a lot of the reason why rock isn't as big today as it was. Those magazines are to blame. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah.
But thankfully
we had Rip
today,
and Cream and Circus and all these great magazines.
But now all these magazines are either gone or they've changed so much that people are starting to get hungry for it again. I saw a billboard out here earlier that said the music industry is still alive. And that's all it was. It was just white and black text. And I saw that and I was like, that's fantastic. That needs to be on a t-shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and then you realize it's really like a corporation, and it's a bunch of guys deciding what they want in there as opposed to what the people decide.
Absolutely.
I mean, Deep Purple just getting in after 30 years of being eligible, or a band like Kiss, or all these people that have taken so long, or then people arguing like, well, this band should be in, or this genre shouldn't be, and it's like, you know, rock and roll is really, it's a lifestyle. It's not a form of music. It's not a certain sound. It's everything. I mean, we're here on the Sunset Strip where every type of music has been popular. Right. You know, and there's something for everybody. It'd be nice to get people back to you know, supporting music more. And
because I mean, you can't classify music these days as alternative rock and active rock, and that's really what we've got.
Yeah.
You know, classic rock too, but I mean, it's not a charting thing because that's stuff that's been out for 25, 30 years. Right?
Yeah.
You can't just classify it as that though, because there needs to be a specific format for Southern rock.
Yeah, everybody doesn't fit into one whole category.
And alternative rock shouldn't be alternative rock. It should be called hipster rock. And then there should be a separate alternative rock for real alternative rock that still exists but doesn't have a chance.
Yeah.
You know, because all these stations are like, well, let's go with the trend that's going to be dead next month.
Yeah.
You know, it's really sad.
Amazing. Now, obviously, the business changed radically, but you know, still the perseverance. You know, you being around so many of these other great bands, you really see kind of that mind state that it takes. What advice do you give to those coming up to kind of follow that path? What do they really need to work on, and what shouldn't they even worry about?
Man, that's a long answer. As far as the business itself goes, there's a thing that's been around for a while now that is absolutely crippling the music business, and it's kind of on the way out now because record labels are dying off, you know, so quickly because of it. It's called the 360 deal.
Yeah.
And it was a terrible idea whenever it first came out. and it's still a terrible idea today. We were caught up with one because we didn't have a choice, just like every other band didn't have a choice. We were with Roadrunner. Now we have a license deal, which means we own our masters. We own everything.
Beautiful.
You know, they invest in us.
You're partners,
And
so to speak.
exactly, we're true partners. But
Yeah.
the 360 deal, they call it a
Master
360.
and the slave.
Yeah, they call it a 360 partnership. That's what it's called. But a 360
right.
deal means they take money from you in 360 degrees.
Yeah, screwing you
So
all
your
the way
touring, your
around.
merchandise, your publishing, your songwriting, your digital sales, everything. Every dollar you make, they're taking anywhere from 10 to 50%, sometimes more. And it's ridiculous because when the music industry started to decline with the birth of Napster and all the torrent sites and all that stuff, when that decline happened, the music business, not the bands, but the music business took an extreme hit. And when that happened, the record labels developed the 360 deal as a method for them to be able to carry on the way they always had, living their rock star lives, while making the bands stay in vans and SUVs and little U-Haul trailers that have 9,000 knots in the tires, because that's exactly what we did when we first started touring.
Yeah.
We toured a GMC Yukon, put 40-some thousand miles on it in 4 months, and the tires on our U-Haul trailer that we were renting literally had more knots than oatmeal. It was ridiculous. And not making anything. You
Sure.
know? The idea of rock bands just being, you know, rich and having all kinds of money these days is not the truth. If there's a band out that's got 5 albums out today like us, the reason why they're still around is because they've learned how to fight and because they truly love playing music. Ultimately, that's all it comes down to. If there's, I have not made $1 million in my career. You can add up all the money I've ever made, and it will not amount to $1 million. It won't even add up to 500,000.
Yeah.
That's just the way the music business is today.
Sure.
I make more money, honestly, doing graphics for other bands and for businesses that are starting up, doing logos and stuff like that. I make more money doing that than I do playing music for my band.
Yeah.
And that's a band.
But obviously you love what you do, and that's the most important thing is don't get into this for money or fame. Right. Do what you love to do, and that's going to show to the people.
That's right. You have to just keep on. Your perseverance is the most important thing, because regardless of what kind of obstacles you come into, as long as you push through it, you'll come out clean on the other side.
Yeah. Well, John, it's a pleasure as always. We're so excited about the album Kentucky.
Thank you, sir.
Coming right after Magic Mountain. What a great staff. Rocking the Sunset Strip tonight. I know it's going to be a big summer of festivals and great shows. Thank you so much. Great to see you.